Quick, Robin, the bat armadillo repellent in our utility belts.
Right. Wait, actually my costume doesn't include a utility belt. We've just been pretending I have one all these years.
Well, old chum, I'm not much better off. You see these pouches on my belt?
Holy square pants! Those aren't pouches, they're sponges.
You've absorbed the situation well, Robin.
Batman, you're all wet.
To the bat poles. Welcome to the Bat Poles. Yes, we're back kind of irregularly. This is Tim in Tokyo with my brother Paul in Hanover, New Hampshire.
How's it going, eh?
And joining us from New Orleans, it's the host of Bat 77 podcast and creator of the theme for my Deconstructing Comics podcast, JB Anderton.
Hello,
Hey,
Tim
JB.
and Paul. Nice to be back on the show.
Nice to have you here. We were just talking about the fact that you were in Chicago the last time we had you on the show, which was probably 3-4 years ago now.
Yeah. It's been that long. Yeah, we moved to my girlfriend and I moved to New Orleans in March of 2022, mainly to escape the 6 months of winter that we always had up there. And she's always loved New Orleans, and we thought we'd give it a shot here. We were fortunate enough that we both work from home, and we were able to take our jobs with us, as well as our Chicago salaries.
Very good. That's
yes,
great.
And we actually bought a home a year ago, and I finally got my own room again. We were in a shotgun shack, a literal shotgun shack, for like the first year and a half we were here, and I had no way to set up anything like this.
You found yourself saying, well, how did I get here?
Pretty much, yeah.
This is not my beautiful house. This is not my beautiful wife. Sorry, Shotgun Shack. It just sends me right to Talking Heads.
Exactly.
Just for the record, our Power Records discussion, that episode came out October 14th, 2021. So it has been 3 years.
Okay, so that was like a few months before we moved. Yeah. I was actually winding down the Bat 77 podcast. Last year, I did bring it back for a short duration. I actually just ended it again. The past year I spent looking at some issues of Batman and Detective, but also looking at some issues of The Brave and the Bold, and a couple of issues of Wilt's Finest, and one issue of the Super Friends that heavily featured Batman and Robin, also the Riddler. And the last episode I recorded, I did the Raven Bold issue with Batman in the House of Mystery, which was done by Denny O'Neil and Neil Adams. And I thought this is a good one to go out on, because all the other issues that I was looking at for, possible episodes, I think I've done all the cream of the crop here, and what's left is just not really exciting me at all. So, and I've actually I've been podcasting kind of nonstop since 2013, and I feel like I kind of want to take a break from that and focus on other things. But I'm here with you tonight, so I don't mind guesting on other people's podcasts. I don't.
Yeah, you don't have to edit this.
No,
so.
I just show up and just
JB, just out of curiosity, what was the year on that Brave and the Bold? Was that before Adams joined the Batman and Detective series? I know at first he was sort of ghettoized. He wanted to do Batman, but he was kind of shoved off to Brave and the Bold because that was written by the writer. His name escapes me, but he was a writer who tended not to care about continuity.
That would be Bob Haney.
That's right, Bob Haney.
I think this one was 71 or 72, and I think at that point he had already, him and Denny had already done some issues on Detective Comics, The Secret of the Waiting Graves.
Yes, that's the big one.
Yeah, that was done, I think, just like right at the tail end of 1969. So I think he's had, he did start at Brave and Bold. Did a few issues there. Bob Haney penned issues of Brave and Bold. But yeah, it was a nice spooky adventure set in Ireland in a castle, and I just thought, yeah, this is a good one to go out on. So it's out there now, and I mean, all the episodes of Bat 77 are still out there for you to listen to, including my extensive review of the 1977 Filmation Batman cartoon, which we'll be talking about tonight.
Yeah, we'll be getting into in a minute here. I should talk about the theme version from the top of the show. It was by the orchestra of the League City Intermediate School in League City, Texas. This is the LCIS Beginning Orchestra. The video was uploaded to YouTube May 19th, 2016. You can tell it's a beginning orchestra because the director has slowed the tempo way down.
Yeah. It's like Batman on Quaaludes.
Yes, Batman as Mr. Relaxation. Yeah, I mean, so they would have been how old, Tim? Did you
well,
did you catch a grade?
Not
middle school would probably be like 5th or 6th grade, I think.
Yeah, probably just, beginning to play not just as lesson takers, but as a group. I was kind of shocked by how good they were. Frankly, the arrangement, JB has some things to say about the arrangement that I never would have been able to catch. But just as players, it felt to me like the conductor was actually meeting the kids where they were instead of trying to rush them, to get them to understand the faster rhythm. They're just sawing away on those things. And when the trap set comes in, the drummer wants to speed things up,
right?
And that he or she gets brought to heel pretty quickly.
Yeah, but she goes off at the very end. She's like, okay, this is my moment here. I'm going to end this.
Yeah, she has a nice little solo. It's very worthy of the Batman theme at whatever speed.
But the arrangement was kind of strange because it's like, trying to explain music theory here. So basically, the Batman theme is basically a blues. It's 1, 4, 5. We start with the G chord, and we have the chromatic, the da 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 da. And then when you switch to the 4 chord, which would be the F chord, instead of the strings going da 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 da, they just stay on the one note. It goes da 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 da, and it's like, did they not learn those notes yet here? I mean, I don't know what's going on. But
that would interrupt the sawing rhythm, I think.
I guess so. I don't know. We got to change. We got to go jump to another string to play those notes. I don't know. It's just weird. I love the fact that the audience was at a 90-degree angle from the stage area.
Yeah, everybody's looking to their right to look at the orchestra. And I don't know if there's a different stage that's straight ahead from them. We can't see over there. It's off-screen space.
I'm just bummed that I missed the guy you noticed getting a snack.
Yeah, he's at the soda machine. He's getting a soda. I'm surprised we didn't hear the loud noise of the soda falling.
Ka-chunk.
Yeah.
Really?
It looked like a teacher, too. It wasn't the student.
It's like the gas can going off.
But no, it was a nice little arrangement. Yeah, very, very slow, but they did a good job.
Yeah, that was fun. I just kept comparing it to the terrible drummers I've heard at my son's jazz band concerts. He's in high school now, and so it's getting better, but in junior and middle school, pretty Yeah. It's like they never even like watched I don't know, a Genesis record, video to see what Phil Collins was doing. Not that I love Phil Collins as a drummer, but nevertheless, at least just basics, like basic rudiments would have been great. But
Exactly.
this person definitely had them.
Yeah.
Let's face it, Bat Mite, you're a nice guy, but you're also a royal pain.
All right, so we're talking about The New Adventures of Batman, which debuted on CBS February 12th, 1977. 16 episodes ran through May 28th of that year, and then I'm sure they went into reruns. But I had forgotten that they kept using these in subsequent seasons by putting them together with other shows. For example,
like the Batman Tarzan Hour, right?
Yeah, Batman Tarzan Adventure Hour in fall of 77. Yeah, and then there were other permutations in later seasons.
And I'm pretty sure that I remember watching the Batman Tarzan Adventure Hour in Cedar Rapids when we had a color television finally. We moved from Centerville, Iowa. And it seems to me that, some of the walk cycles, but also the swim cycles looked like in Tarzan looked as though they had been stolen from the New Adventures of Batman cartoon. See, when Tarzan would swim, it looked just like, when they swim in one of the episodes of New Adventures after they'd been shrunk.
Yeah, I'm sure on the Tarzan, I remember the Tarzan cartoon, and I know a lot of those sequences, they rotoscoped where you basically, you film someone doing an action and then you basically kind of trace over it.
Right, one frame at a time.
Yeah, like in Snow White.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And I think at one point it switched networks when it was Batman and the Super 7. It was on NBC, I think, like in like the early 80s. And it was
What's the Super 7?
I guess it was like a bunch of like other Filmation shows, like maybe 10, 15-minute segments. I don't remember what they were, but I just remember it was Tarzan and the Super 7, and then they switched networks and it was Batman and the Super 7.
See what I can find here. Tarzan, Freedom Force, Jason of Star Command, Manta and Moray, Super Stretch and Micro Woman, and Web Woman.
Super Stretch and Micro Woman. The mind boggles as I try to imagine.
So anyway, with this show, okay, buckle up. I had kind of a revelation about this show.
Okay.
So
it's worse than you remembered?
The other day, I saw a social media post that began, "That moment when you realize the main character isn't the main character." I had a moment like that with this show. This show is called The New Adventures of Batman, but that's just a ruse. Holy misdirection. This series' main character is Bat Mite. Watching this show as an 11-year-old in early 1977, I hated Bat Mite. My Batman was, of course, Adam West, and the 66 series had no freaking Bat Mite. Back then, I assumed the character had been created by Filmation, not realizing that he had regularly appeared in Batman comics between 1959 and 1964, starting with Detective Comics 267, getting the boot when the New Look Batman was introduced. The comics version of Bat Mite was more of a trickster, in the mode of Superman's Mr. Mxyzptlk. Bat Mite in this cartoon is more like a little kid who just wants to help but can't get out of his own way. As I started rewatching it for this episode of the podcast, I was prepared to hate this show because of Bat Mite, but now I can see that I had it all wrong. We're supposed to be rooting him on. Holy Joseph Campbell, this series is his character arc. How so, you ask? At the start of the series, Bat Mite seems to be reviled by the duo. Batman's treatment of Bat Mite reminds me more of Legends of the Superheroes Batman, who threatens to spank Robin. Batman's kind of nasty to Bat Mite, tossing him in a closet. Well, on rewatch, I'm not sure it was a closet, but anyway, he slammed the door in his face.
It was the Bat Closet.
He and Robin formed the disdainful duo, repeatedly telling our hero Bat Mite to get lost. Paul and I were never this mean to our little sister. Actually, I see parallels here to another famous hero. Bat Mite can do magic, just like Harry Potter. He apparently gets shut in a closet, just like Harry Potter, whose abusive aunt and uncle locked him in a cupboard. And in the end, Bat Mite helps to save the day, just like Harry Potter. Although this show has to pay lip service to the idea that Batman is the main character and let him and Robin administer the final blow to Zarbor in the 16th and final episode, entitled, appropriately enough, This Looks Like a Job for Bat Mite. In the final Bat Message tag scene, Batman has to grudgingly admit, quote, if it weren't for Bat Mite, unquote, they couldn't have defeated Zarbor. Something has changed. The disdainful duo no longer. Batman and Robin have to admit a modicum of respect for our now fully superheroic hero, Bat Mite. Final thought. If there'd been a second season, Bat Mite would undoubtedly have gotten the girl, that being his crush, Batgirl. And now that I put that picture in your mind, I'll drop the mic.
Wow.
What do you think?
Wow, I don't even know why I'm here tonight. Jeez.
Yes, you discovered the hero's journey, at work in, not only the Star Wars films and, just about every other movie about, coming of age heroes, but Bat Mite, man, I still hate him.
We realize.
I don't like him any more than I used to. But
I'm kind of in between. I remember, because I remember watching the show. I remember they announced the show, and they announced that Adam West and Burt Ward were going to return to the roles and voice their characters, and I remember being very excited about that. And
we were too,
because I would watch, of course, the '66 Batman in syndication, and then the local station would stop showing it. It was exciting to know that Batman was coming back. It was in cartoon form, but it was still Batman, and it was Adam West and Burt Ward. I remember tuning in and instantly recognizing all the stock shots, all the animated cells that were reused from '68 Filmation, because that was also on syndication, and it was a little weird to hear their voices coming out of that Batman and that Robin, when I'm used to Ulan Soule and Casey Kasem voicing those versions of the characters. So that was a bit weird. And I remembered Bat Mite being in the comics, because I did have a copy of the book Batman from the 30s to the 70s, and that did have, I think, at least a couple of Bat Mite stories in there.
Okay.
So I knew the character. I don't remember whether or not I thought he was very annoying. I remember when I bought the DVD release. This was been probably like maybe 20 years ago. I was still in Chicago then, and watching back, and it's like, yeah, this is an annoying character. But I mean, the thing about Bat Mite is he helps to pad out the episodes, because these are like 1:30, it's one story to fill a 30-minute time slot. Whereas in the '68 version, we had like a two-parter followed by a one-parter, like 3 8-minute segments per half hour. And if you didn't have Bat Mite there, the story would be done in 8 minutes.
That's true. I'm sure that I had never seen him in a comic before. We used to hang out, stay overnight at the house of a friend in Centerville whose brother had, Silver Age comics up the wazoo, including DC's. And, but I don't think anything older than the beginning of the New Look. We probably never saw Bat Mite, under any other format. But I think if I had seen him as a comic book character, I might not have minded him, because you couldn't hear him.
Right.
It's the voice that gets to me the most. And, it feels like, from I don't know where Fred Silverman was working at this point, but it feels a bit like those, Fred Silverman characters, the dogs and various other, sidekicks that were added onto superhero and other cartoons, supposedly to appeal to the youngest children.
And that's exactly why they did it. It was actually Lou Schreiber who voiced Bat Mite, and he's the head. He was the head of Filmation, and he specifically brought in Bat Mite to entertain the young kids who were watching the show. What's interesting is that I would imagine they probably would have created some character to fill that spot. But Bob Kane was a consultant for this series, and so I would imagine that he would have been the one who suggested, "Hey, let's just use Bat Mite. We've got this character here that I did, or my ghost writers did."
Yeah, that I quote unquote.
I Bill Finger. I mean, excuse me. I Bob Kane.
Yeah. Sadly, this was like a few short years after Bill Finger passed away when this came out. But Bob Kane would have brought. I suspect that Bob Kane brought in the Bat Mite character to use specifically for this series.
Somebody.
It's funny. I didn't even notice it until I saw it mentioned in Wikipedia. But this show came out when children's TV regulations were really strict, and there's no punching.
No.
At all. And for some reason, I didn't miss it. Like, oh, okay. Well, Batman has to use his brain more.
Yeah, I mean, the stories were structured so differently. I mean, a lot of the stories were revolved around ecology and pollution, or there was always some kind of alternate energy source. There was the first episode where the Joker steals the car that runs on water.
Right.
We have solar energy, nuclear power. The episode where Catwoman and Clayface team up, that's a strange team up, to steal oil in the middle of winter. So there's always some kind of, the socially conscious today, they would say that it was a very woke show, but it was very socially conscious about, alternate energy and, what we were doing to the planet.
Well, this was the moment of the real height of the mid-'70s energy crisis.
Exactly.
The thing that ended up kicking Jimmy Carter out of office eventually, or one of the main things, I think.
Yeah.
So the alternative energy source kind of theme is an interesting parallel to what was happening in the real world. That the kids' parents were arguing about how much gas costs and whether they go on vacation this year or not. Well, even the Moon Man episode, which I found upsetting, just because it felt like my intelligence was being insulted to such a terrible degree. But I'm
like, of course he's the Moon Man.
I'm a lot older than I was when I was 7, so I'm sure I wouldn't have minded it then. But the Moon Man, he seems to be almost like he's kind of like Moon Knight, right? He's a fighter on behalf of the moon. He's trying to save the moon from, the Earthers screwing it up, or, excavating it, or stealing, moon rocks and using them for their own purposes, or moon metal. What is moon metal anyway? The moon metal, the roller coaster was supposedly made of. I'm not sure that there was any possibility of mining the moon for ore in 1977.
Yeah, and they made the roller coaster rails out of moon rock. How do you do that?
Yeah, moon metal. What is that stuff? And if I'd known that all you had to do was to turn a couple of bat gyros upside down to solve the problem of there being 4 feet of track missing. You might just shut down the roller coaster instead, so that hundreds of people don't die and fall out or crash or whatever. But instead, they just let the darn thing run, so Batman and Robin could turn their auto gyros upside down, so the ski whatevers would replace the tracks.
The sled, because they're set up as like sleds.
The sled, yes, that's right.
Yeah.
I couldn't figure out why they called them gyros. They're flying chairs, basically.
They're basically whirly.
Chairs.
They were called whirly bats, I think, in the comic book, and they were modeled straight from the comic book, I thought.
Yeah. Well, gyro is an old word for a small helicopter, back into the 30s and 40s when, tiny helicopters were first possible. But still, it's a kind of outdated word even in 77.
Yeah.
Hey there, Bat fans. It's JB in New Orleans, your host of Bat 77, the 70s Batman podcast. I am a child of the 1970s and a lifelong Batman fan. And each month, I summarize and review a randomly picked Batman comic story published in the 1970s. From the pages of Detective Comics, Batman, The Brave and the Bold, and World's Finest. I also read from the letters pages and highlight all the memorable ads from the comics. On past episodes, I have also discussed Batman's appearances on Saturday morning television and the Power Records audio adventures. You can find the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you stream or download your favorite podcasts. Or you can find me on the web at bat77podcast.libsyn.com.
After a 4-year journey, Patrick and I on the Law of Equivalent Exchange podcast are reaching the end of our chapter-by-chapter look at the manga Full Metal Alchemist. Personally, Full Metal is my favorite comic of all time, manga or otherwise. If you haven't read it yet, we hope you will, and then follow each chapter with a listen to our podcast on that chapter. Available wherever you listen to podcasts or at loee.buzzsprout.com. Our 2-part look at the final chapter of the manga begins December 16th, and listen to Part 2 on December 30th to find out what's next for the Law of Equivalent Exchange. I was noticing the absence of Riddler, other than in the opening wearing a pink costume for some reason.
Love the pink costume.
Wikipedia mentions that, so Hanna-Barbera was working on the Challenge of the Super Friends, which didn't debut until fall 78, the third round of Super Friends cartoons. And they had the rights to Riddler, so this show couldn't use him. And conversely, this show had rights to the Joker, and Challenge of the Super Friends couldn't use him.
Right. And what was funny is that I remember, I think there was one Saturday that I might have missed the show, and I was fully convinced that it was the Riddler episode. So I kept watching. I kept waiting for the Riddler. When are they going to show the Riddler episode?
He's in the opening credits.
Yeah,
He's
exactly.
gotta be there somewhere.
He's in a pink costume, but it's still the Riddler. It's like, when are they going to show them?
Yeah.
And I didn't know there was any. I didn't know a thing about what character rights were back then.
Yeah, I was guessing that it was just nobody wanted to try to write riddles. I mean, it seems like Riddler's kind of a hard character to write. But did you notice there's one episode where Bruce and Dick are bowling at Wayne Manor, and the bowling pins have villain faces on them, including Riddler's.
Right.
So he shows up there too, but never shows up in person.
Right.
As long as they represent him only as like a bowling pin or underoos or something, I suppose it's fine to represent him. They just can't use him as an actual character.
That was also why they couldn't have the Scarecrow on the Filmation show, because it was also licensed to the Super Friends at that time.
Yeah.
So JB, I don't want you to give away everything that you talk about on the your own podcast about this show, because obviously we want people to listen to your podcast.
I appreciate that.
What's your sense of the overarching, what holds these episodes together for you, and what makes them distinct from the original Filmation series?
Well, I think the main thing is we have Adam and Bert voicing their character roles, and they're different performances from their live action. Burt Ward, particular, there's something about his performance that's off for me. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that he lost being able to use his physicality, because in the TV show, he was always slamming his fist in his hands. He had that stance, he was, stand up on his tippy toes and everything. And he would
he kind of bounced like a boxer.
Exactly. He'd do the karate stance and everything, but that's all out the window. So, and Burt Ward, I think after the 66 show, he did 2 stage plays, but he had no other acting credits between the 66 show and the 77 Filmation cartoon. All that time, I think he was doing personal appearances. What's interesting is that Bert made an appearance. It was some local TV kids show. I think it was in Seattle. It was you can find it on YouTube under the Clown Show, but that's not what it was called. But he makes an appearance in costume as Robin, and he mentions that there's going to be this cartoon series that's going to be coming up.
Yeah, I saw that recently.
And
Yeah, I did too.
And he actually says that there's going to be both like animated segments and live action segments with him and Adam. Now, of course, that never happened.
That's interesting. You know, perhaps they had at one point hypothesized they might do the bat message or whatever it's called at the end of
bat
each episode.
message.
That would have been the most logical thing to do. Yeah,
Sure. Yeah, kind of like
that message starts out as moralizing and ends up just being a recap.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, they didn't really hold up. I mean, or they like be right Bat Mite again.
It'd be another Bat Mite gag.
Yeah, but I mean, his Robin is a bit more mature because I mean, Batman lets him actually go out and do things, unsupervised, which is nice.
He can drive.
Exactly. He still has all the holy puns.
His delivery on the holies is really good,
right? But otherwise, it's a little strange. Now, Adam, I think I love his performance. He gets to be more intense. He's much broader, than he was very subtle on the show because he let the costume do all the work. But Adam, I think he's a skilled enough actor to change to adapt to. This was his first work, I think, in Filmation, and of course, he went on to do a lot of of animation work. I think this show is beginning of the transition from '66 Batman to Mayor West on Family Guy.
And he did Batman on Super Friends later, didn't he?
He did, yes. And it was
I didn't realize that.
Yes, when it was like the Superpowers team or something like that. It was when they brought in Firestorm, and Ulan Soleil went on to play. He left the role of Batman and he played Professor Martin Stein, who was like one half of Firestorm, and they brought in Adam West. And there was one episode called The Fear, which was the very first time that they showed the origin of Batman in a cartoon. And I mean, his performance in that was amazing because he actually, we actually flash back to, when Thomas and Martha Wayne was, killed in we don't see it, of course, look out, he's got it. And then they cut to like a lightning strike. You don't see the gun, you don't hear it go off, but then you don't even see the bodies there, but it's, what happened. And it was actually, they were thinking about doing this as a backdoor pilot to a new Batman animated series. But I guess that didn't happen, of course. But yeah, he went on to, he did Batman for a while, and then, eventually he became Mayor West in Family Guy and, a lot of other bit parts here and there. He was also in The Batman, which was the animated show that was made after the Bruce Timm series, where he played the mayor of Gotham City in that.
That's right. I had forgotten about that.
And of course, he was the Gray Ghost in the animated series. That was a landmark episode there.
Right. We did an episode about that ourselves.
Yeah, he does. There are a few moments where we get a little bit of subtlety, and we almost get like a bit of like double entendre. There's a bit where they're all in the Batcopter. Batgirl's been framed by Catwoman because they think that she stole some device that turns trash into fabric. And he's going, and Batgirl's like, I've got to, I've got to clear my name. And it's like, we got to bring you back to police headquarters. It's, the right thing to do. But then he goes, of course, we'll take a little detour on the way.
Yeah, I love that.
And it's like, oh my God, are you going to go have a quickie on, before you take him to police headquarters here? Jeez.
Yes, I never noticed how beautiful you were until you started breaking the law.
and Robin's right there.
And Bat Mite.
And Bat Mite.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's funny. I hadn't even caught that.
But yeah, the weirdest thing to me about this show is no Alfred.
Yes.
what are they thinking?
Yeah.
And then you have this really weird thing at the end of the first episode where they're lounging around Wayne Manor in costume.
Yeah, at the dinner
sitting
table.
At the table, like eating dinner as Batman and Robin. They do all kinds of things in the show that they just kind of throw their secret identities to the wind. They've got a bat tower next to Wayne Manor. How do you explain Batman's tower next to your house?
Well, I mean, the entrance to the Bat Cave and like the bat hangar there, it's just off the side road, just off of the main road to Wayne Manor.
And when we put an imaginary property line there.
Yeah, there's the Sweet Tooth episode where Bruce and Dick are in the park, and they're waiting for Sweet Tooth to make his move, and like all the water's been turned to chocolate syrup, and like all the kids are drinking out of the fountains and everything. And then at the end of the scene, it's like, we better get going, Robin. Right with you, Batman. And like, there's nothing. You're giving your identities away here in the park in front of all these kids.
I think it's Sweet Tooth where Dick goes undercover.
Oh yeah,
and so Batman's talking about it in Commissioner Gordon's office, and like, how does he explain his connection to Dick Grayson?
Well, yeah, and they seem to know who Batgirl is too, or else again it doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly. So they know Batgirl is Barbara Gordon, which is a nice change because I got so sick in the third season of like, she's gone. Can't we follow her? No, Robin, we must respect her secret identity is,
But she doesn't seem to know who they are because they have to blindfold her when they take her to the Batcave.
Yes.
Right.
And also, Bat Mite doesn't know that Barbara Gordon is Batman, and so when he meets Barbara Gordon, he doesn't have a crush on her, he just has a crush on Batgirl. Like, he can't tell they're the same person.
Exactly, yeah, because she actually goes to Commissioner Gordon's house, and Barbara's there, and it's like, I need your help to contact Batgirl, because Batman and Robin are in trouble.
Oh, right, yes.
And there's this giant portrait of Commissioner Gordon and Batgirl in the living room. It's like more than life size, and it's like, this is kind of creepy here. I don't know what's going on here.
Like the duck from You Bet Your Life comes out of the ceiling and says, "Hint, hint! Look, fellows, look at this painting. Just notice, they happen to be in the same place at the same time." Anyway.
And also, Barbara Gordon, she's not a librarian, but she's the assistant district attorney.
Yeah.
So does that mean that she's working for Harvey Dent?
Now that could have been quite a subplot.
Yeah.
Crank that over. And I have to admit that I find the fact that both Barbara's and Batgirl's hair is red in the comics and here in the Filmation series a lot less convincing than the dark-haired Barbara Gordon versus the red-haired Batgirl
on the show. I mean, it was a much better disguise on the 66 series.
Well, that's nothing
in the comics.
That's nothing in comparison to where we have the episode where Clayface is trying to get this gymnast to help him do crimes, and he's a spitting image of Robin the Boy Wonder, not Dick Grayson, but Robin the Boy Wonder. And there's a point where I think Jim Gordon and Barbara are watching him perform, and Jim's like, there's something familiar about that. Yeah, it's Dick Grayson. He was a gymnast in the circus here.
An acrobat, yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. That reminds me a lot of, kind of doubling of Dick Grayson from the first Filmation series.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Isn't there an episode in which
it was Catwoman? There was the Catwoman. There was this runaway, and he got bonked on the head, and they had to dye his hair, but otherwise he was the spitting image of Robin.
Right, and every once in a while they would just hear him saying under his breath, "And here's your long distance dedication."
So they decided, hey, let's make it a double for Robin.
Got to make an AT-40 joke.
Good going, Catwoman.
Boy, I have so many notes on this. I mean, there are so many points where you're kind of like, what? That's not like when Sweet Tooth turns the water into chocolate syrup. I don't know how he does that. Just kind of poof. It's even worse explained than Joker and the strawberry jam and Zodiac. And then when they change it back to water, there's no need to flush out the water pipes, to get all that chocolate out of there. It's just, okay, it's all just automatically water again.
I would have bought it, and probably did when I was 8.
Or in the Bermuda Rectangle episode. So
it strikes me as such a Maxwell Smart kind of thing to call it the Bermuda Rectangle instead of the triangle.
Or a Batman 66 thing.
Yes, of course. Absolutely.
When Batman's scuba diving and the electric eels are coming for him, and he's like, the phone line is DC, eels are AC. Maybe I can change their polarity. Well, I did some research here. Undersea phone lines are usually DC, but there's not much agreement on the eels. Are they both? Are they neither? So I don't know, but it worked for this. Although I was wondering, did the shock kill them when he linked them to the undersea cable? And did Batman interrupt international phone service? That's another good question. And also in that episode, who names a shark Sharktooth?
Well, we had Sweet Tooth, but why not Shark Tooth?
Yeah, well, that's true. Yes, and let's head you back to your home, which is basically the size and shape of a shark. What a home for a free swimming, underwater, king of the sea like a shark. Yeah, that's a little bit less environmentally honest than some things that happen in the show. But I'm just complaining. It's there's no point in just Mystery Science Theater 3000ing everything.
Oh, I mean, this is ripe with like all kinds of MST things to pick at, which is, I as a fan, I enjoy doing that,
Yeah, I do too. I do too. Wouldn't watch it in the first place if I wasn't interested in it and didn't like it. But
do you notice when Clayface turns into a shark, there's a Jaws reference as he's coming up towards Batman?
Exactly. Yeah, that was intentional. I can imagine.
Yeah, gotta be.
Yeah, and he's like 100 feet wide.
Yeah, he's a huge shark compared to Batman.
Yeah.
Yes, and even as kids in the 70s, what the Jaws movie was from 75. Even though I wouldn't see the film until sometime in the late 80s or early 90s, we still knew the imagery. There would have been no missing.
It was part of the cultural zeitgeist. To the point where they were doing skits about him on Saturday Night Live.
That's right.
Yeah. Bat Mite's powers come and go. Did you notice, sometimes, he can teleport, but when he's tied up, then for some reason he doesn't just teleport out of the ropes. In some cases, he's kind of stuck. And also, I couldn't tell if he's capable of levitation or not. That seemed to be kind of fudged too.
Well, and if Batman and Robin drop a birdcage on him, he apparently can't.
Yeah.
He mentions that steel is the one thing that can stop him.
Oh, okay.
So it's why don't they just put him in a steel box and just be done with him in every episode?
Well, if they did that, then Adam West couldn't do the slow burn that he does so well in the show. Bat Mite. It's like he's channeling Werner Klemperer from Hogan's Heroes.
Yeah.
Schultz.
Yeah. He also channels John Wayne a bit, but he refers to him a couple times as little fella.
Under his breath.
Yeah.
I want to talk about voices here. So with Joker, when we covered the 68 show, we talked about the discussion on 13thdimension.com that Joker is not voiced by Larry Storch in that cartoon, but apparently by Ted Knight.
Who also voices the Riddler in the original cartoon.
Yeah. And for some reason, it never sounded to me like Ted Knight. Then we got to this one, and I was convinced that Joker was voiced by Ted Knight, and he wasn't.
No, he would have been busy doing Mary Tyler Moore at that time.
Yeah.
He would have been way too busy.
It would have been the final season of that.
But who does voice him? Because in most of the episodes, there are only 4, voice credits.
It's an actor named...
And 2 of them are Burt and
Adam West. Yeah. The actor's name is Lenny Weinrub, and he basically does all the male voices except for Batman and Robin, and except for Clayface and a few other characters. Clayface was actually voiced by Lou Schreiber, who did Bat Mite's voice.
Schreiber, yeah.
Mhm.
Lenny Weinrib, his Joker. I mean, because Joker is he appears, I think, the most in this series. I think he's in like 4 or 5 episodes, and his first episode is a much more traditional Joker voice. I mean, it does remind me of Ted Knight, but in his second episode, the one where he escapes and he does the he breaks the elephants out of the circus and everything. His voice, he sounds more like Pee Wee Herman, because he'll go in like a high register and then in the middle of the sentence he'll go down like this and speak,
Yeah.
and just kind of
A
like
lot like Ted Knight's Riddler in the first series.
a little bit. I mean, Ted Knight was more like Shatner crossed with Christopher Walken. But Joker
that is
just
so apt, JB. That is perfect.
Just like everything just kind of clicked, fell into place for me when you said that.
yeah. But his Joker from like the second appearance onward is basically kind of Pee Wee Herman before Pee Wee Herman, because I don't know when he came up with that character, Paul Rubens.
Yeah, he was doing it on stage for a little while, with Phil Hartman, who was co-writing,
Right.
in Little Theater,
Yeah,
in,
yeah.
California, I think at first, but
Yeah.
I don't think the character really came into being until the late 70s, early 80s.
Right. But Lenny Weinrib does Commissioner Gordon's. You can actually tell. I mean, his Jim Gordon voice is sort of like kind of generic. But you can kind of tell he's the same guy that does Joker.
It's no wonder Joker does such a good Commissioner Gordon impression.
Exactly.
It's the same voice actor.
And then like the Riddler, I mean, for the Penguin, he does this hoo 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 kind of laugh, and he does. That's wrong. He does a wah, 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 wah. He kind of does Burgess Meredith, but not really. But he's like very erudite and very kind of British and probably a little fey. At one point,
a little more like the character in the Silver Age comics.
pretty much so. And at one point, he's got a protege named Gigi, who basically, I don't know if it's his sister or if she had herself surgically altered to look like the Penguin, because she's got the same nose and the same physical build. And she's basically the proto Harley Quinn, because she's got like the Brooklyn accent and everything.
When I first saw her, I thought, is that Lola Lasagna?
I was going to say Ethel Merman. It was written all over.
Yeah. And Lenny Weinrib, he was a voice of HR Pop and stuff. He was also okay. Speaking of annoying characters, he was also the first voice for Scrappy Doo.
The only sidekick character whom I hate more than Bat Mite.
And he actually voiced Superman, the Filmation Superman, not in the series, of course. That was Bud Collyer, but there was a Sesame Street short that they did. They had some shorts on Sesame Street that featured Batman and Robin, voiced by Ulan Soleil and Casey Kasem. And there was at least one with Superman, and he voiced him there, Lenny Weinrib. And he also voiced Superman when he made his appearance on the Brady Kids cartoon. So, and then we have Melody Britt. It was
Melody.
Melody, yeah.
There's an N in it.
Yeah, Melody Britt. Apparently, I don't know if this is true or not, but apparently they approached Yvonne Craig to reprise the role as Batgirl.
Wouldn't surprise me.
And she refused. So they got Melody Britt to come in to do Barbara Gordon and Batgirl and Catwoman. Her Catwoman is much better than Jane Webb's in '68.
Oh yeah, the '68 Catwoman sounded like a wicked witch.
Yeah, but of course she would go on to be the voice of She-Ra, Princess of Power. So her Catwoman reminds me, it's like a cross between She-Ra and Catra, because with the meows and cat noises. And then her Barbara Gordon kind of swings more towards, and her Batgirl kind of swings more towards like She-Ra's alter ego or Allura, more girly. But I think she did an excellent job And Batgirl's a much more tolerable character. I mean, Batman kind of takes over the role as the pest and, he screws things up. And Batgirl is very competent and basically an equal to Batman and Robin.
She seems that way. They treat her that way much more than they do in the 66 series.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I was blown away. I get apparently, according to IMDb, which I know we can't always trust, Lenny Weinrib did the Sweet Tooth voice. I'm like, how do you do such a spot-on Paul Lynde imitation?
Know. I thought that was Paul. I thought that was Paul Lynde.
I did too.
I checked. Like, is it Paul Lynde?
But yeah, he was just a spot-on Paul Lynde. It's like, that's an interesting way of playing that character. Yeah.
Sweet Tooth, as Assistant District Attorney, I demand that you surrender the computer lock to your water system.
No chance.
Well, then you can plan to spend quite a long time in this cell.
It all depends on what you mean by a long time.
It wouldn't be that far off the realm of possibility because, I mean, Paul Lynde did animation work. He was the voice of Templeton the Rat and Charlotte's Web.
Of course. Wow, I hadn't thought about that in a long time.
Yeah. So, I mean, I thought that was Paul Lynde, but yeah, he does. It was just amazing. And Sweet Tooth, I think, out of the original villain characters created specifically for the show, I think Sweet Tooth works out the best. I think he's the one that fits most in the mold. He's kind of like Simon the Pie Man. He could have been a character from the 66 series.
It's true.
I think the fact that his henchmen are like underage kids is a little creepy.
That's a good point.
I don't think you can get away with that today. I don't know how they got that past the censors, but that's just first thing we're gonna do, we're gonna send you to a dentist.
Child endangerment.
Yeah, exactly. Like, we're child services here. My God.
Right. So TV censorship, on cartoons was the most rigid it had been in years, and yet they're allowing like child labor to be represented on the show.
Exactly. And God knows what else. I mean, I won't even mention what's a grown obese man doing with a bunch of obese kids. It's just...
No, it's Kinko the Clown from the Dr. Demento show all over again. Well, the question I had, we don't have to like go into it right at this moment because I know Tim has something to say too, but I'm just interested in the kind of slew of made up characters that reminds me a bit of the way that the Spider-Man comic strip in the 1970s seemed to prefer made up kind of on the spot characters.
The Rattler.
The Rattler, let's say, to Spider-Man villains who'd been around since the 60s. But it is interesting because I think you're right that Sweet Tooth is the most realized in the sense of there being Batman villains who have a shtick, who actually can do this kind of repeated thing that they do, like riddles or jokes or
all his crimes are based on candy or sweets.
Right. In the case of it's like Penguin. All of his most of his crimes are based on something to do with birds. So that it's not a super complex shtick, but it is a shtick.
Exactly.
And it's much better than, say, Starman, who I found pretty irritating because we think he's like an alien, but it doesn't really turn out that he is exactly because we never find out anything more about him except that he's really good at hypnotizing people with his ray gun. Anyway, Tim, you wanted to say something. I don't want to get
I still have so many things to say.
Oh, yeah.
You mentioned Spider-Man villains. Why does this show have both an Electro and a Chameleon? Let's just steal all the names of Where's your Doc Ock version?
Yeah, that's interesting.
I mean, they're completely different from the Spidey villains, but the names.
Yeah. The Shocker didn't affect me that much, but once we got to the Chameleon, it seemed like it was that's a villain from Spider-Man #1.
Electro and Chameleon.
Electro, sorry. Yeah, the Chameleon is from Spider-Man #1, so that felt like it was a little, hitting a little closer to home.
Maybe they just didn't know. I mean,
possible, sure.
It's possible, yeah.
Yeah, maybe they're so in the DC bubble that they didn't notice it.
Yeah, but yeah.
Oh, I think it's the AC bubble, isn't it, Tim? Oh, wait a minute. Are Eels DC or AC? I can never
Maybe
remember.
we can reverse the polarity.
What about Malcolm Young? Is he DC or AC?
I thought the music in this was better than 68. Certainly not that.
I beg to differ.
Yeah,
weird
please
theme.
go ahead.
But well, the problem with the music was that they had such a small palette, and that action music is let's use it again and again.
Oh,
and
it's
again.
not even scoring. It's just dropping the same theme in every 15 seconds.
Exactly.
It's not even in a minor key ever.
It's once in a while.
Yeah.
Not the main theme.
I liked the music. I just wish that there had been more variety to it because they apparently had a really limited budget on the music.
Well, and not only that is that they actually use music from other series. There's a lot of music that they used originally from the Star Trek animated series, and you would also hear certain music cues from the Shazam ISIS Hour. So
is that the same year?
I think
77, 78?
I think Shazam
roughly.
ISIS came out like a year before.
Okay.
But
that kind of theme,
yeah.
I mean, they actually used that in the Wonder Woman live action series at one point. I'm not kidding. I was shocked when I realized it.
Man.
But yeah, it's like that one really got around. It's pretty good dramatic music, but not when you hear it for the 16th time in a different show.
Exactly. I mean, that's
the problem.
Yeah, that was a cue that was originally from the Star Trek animated series.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, yeah. They use a lot of the Star Trek music on the Batman show. And
it's like Luis Buñuel saying, you know what? If they use it over and over again, it must be good. So let's use it too.
Yeah. Now the main theme, the main theme there are some variations because there's there's sort of a more jazzy theme. There's one that's like set in waltz time. But a lot of times it's just the wow, 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 wow. I mean, I was able to learn that, and that was the theme to my podcast for the first 18 episodes, because I was able to pick that up by ear and orchestrate it.
Look, the bat signal. To the bat cave, Dick.
I wish I knew who that drummer was. I really liked his drum fills there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they were more tasty. But I think I'm with Paul on this. I think I prefer the 66 music. I mean, yeah, the da da da. That's really kind of like, it's like.
Well, the 66 music, sure, but I was comparing it to 68.
68.
Oh, the 60. I'm sorry. Yeah, the 6. That's what I meant. The 68. I didn't like the theme for that show. But
I didn't either. But at least there was more variety. I think music can be good, and musical cues can be good, and tasty and whatever. But if they use them over and over again, they're no longer any good because they're just catch-alls.
And I think
they just drop them in whenever they need it.
And I think 77 was a worse offender as far as using that main theme. Over and over.
I noticed a number of times. I mean, I was naming the bits like, okay, that's the resolution music they play at the end, and that's the action music, then that's the mystery villain, or the villain is doing something bad music. And there were places where there was an action scene, and of course it was that action music, and then there was another action scene right after, and they just started up again.
Yeah. Reminded of where have
I heard this before?
Oh yeah, 2 minutes that would always end the end of the episode. Da 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 da. Boom. And he usually introduced the episodes too.
Boy, let's see. So a couple of things that are very non-66. Mm-hmm. For one thing, when Batman and Robin are in the Batmobile, they never wear their seatbelts. I guess because they're animated cartoons, so they're in no danger.
Well, and they're still using the 68
model sheets, yeah.
It seems to be, because they're both leaning forward to the point where even if they were wearing seatbelts, their heads would immediately go through the windshield if they, even stopped short.
Also, and I know this is a hobby horse on this podcast, Batman keeps calling Robin Boy Wonder. And I mean, that was a simple rule that Batman never did that other than when he's introducing Robin to someone else. But I was wondering if the comics had that rule. Maybe not. I have no idea.
I don't think so. I don't think they ever referred to him as the Boy Wonder in any of the comics stories except for like the title card.
Never paid any attention,
but not in story. I don't think so. Maybe like
specifically.
I mean, not Batman, and certainly not like his inner circle of you know crime fighters and villains, but like maybe someone out in the streets, like, oh, there's Robin the Boy Wonder. But yeah.
Yeah, on the show, villains call him Boy Wonder. Gordon calls him Boy Wonder, but Batman does not address him that way.
We do get a Boy Blunder from Sweet Tooth, I think.
Mm-hmm, right, and yeah, this is a little different, but Starman calls them the dynamic pickles. Maybe the worst of all nicknames, villainous nicknames that are supposed to be like even slightly funny. It doesn't exactly land for me because it doesn't sound like duo at all. Pickle and duo don't rhyme. I just want to point this out to the writers in absentia.
I think, and he thought that joke was so funny,
Oh yes, yeah. He laughed at a lot of his jokes. Maybe because nobody else was going to, they had to use him as the laugh track.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we have to talk about the talking bat computer.
Oh,
I don't know what's up with that.
Well, dynamic duo, looks like you could use some help.
Electro used a shrinking ray on us, Bat Computer. Can you come up with an antidote that'll bring us back to normal?
That Electro is a very clever fellow, all right. Too bad he can't put his smarts to good use. Oh well, I'll see what I can do.
Wow, it's like, the HAL 9000 who's decided he wants to glad hand the dynamic duo instead of just telling them what they're supposed to be doing.
Right, and what's interesting is that, I mean, I think in the first few episodes, it was basically like the punch cards. They were using the punch cards.
Yeah, there's no voice at all, as far as I can recall.
And of course, the over-reliance of the Bat Computer, which is straight out of season 3 of 66 Batman. The first episode, the Joker's going to do something at 7:00, and it's 6:00 now. It's like, well, we got to go back to the Batcave and plug this into the Bat Computer because we don't know what's going on.
Drive the 14 miles.
Exactly. I mean, fortunately, there's no traffic in the streets of Gotham, so they were.
And why would you check the paper to find out what's happening at 7:00 tonight? But
yeah, I mean, they over reliance of the Bat Computer, I noted in several episodes. But yeah, but sometime in the middle of the series, it switched to a voice. This it's again voiced by Lenny Weinrib, slowed down. And he's also very he picks on Bat Mite a lot. They have this very adversarial relationship. I think again, more comedy relief for the kiddies.
Probably, yeah. Now, speaking of voices, maybe in the what would it be? I guess in the Moonman episode, I think one of the police, one of the guards, I should say, at the museum, which is simply called Museum, which I think is great. Why not make it as generic as possible? If it is a generic museum, after all, it has the moon rock and, Moonman steals it. But I think one of the police, the first guard who speaks, sounds like Adam West to me. And I wonder if West or Ward might have done other voices, at least in the first few episodes for the series.
I don't think they would have. I think that voice that you're referring to, I think he also does the Carnival Barker in the Moonman episode. I believe.
Oh, we're the world's tallest Carnival Barker.
Yeah,
right? He's 40 feet tall.
I believe that was Norm Prescott, who was one of the heads of Filmation, because he's a very familiar sounding voice if you're familiar with Filmation cartoons.
That's interesting. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, and I don't think that Adam. I mean, I don't know if Adam and Bert acted together in the sound studio.
Yeah, well, one thing that I read was saying that each voice was recorded separately, and that might account for some woodenness because they couldn't interact.
And they probably did it all in a week. They probably had 16 scripts. They probably did 2 scripts a day.
Most likely.
And so they probably got paid. Oh God, I wouldn't. I don't know how much they would have paid because Filmation it would have been on a tight budget because Filmation at that point was the only cartoon studio that did all its work in America. They didn't ship out any animation overseas. It was all done in the States.
So it was expensive labor compared to the other studios' work.
Pretty much, yeah. So I would imagine they probably had him for maybe no more than 2 weeks. And I don't think, I mean, certainly Burt Ward would not have been able to voice any other characters.
Sure.
They would all sound like Burt Ward, yes.
Pretty much, yeah. He's not as good as Casey. I mean, even though you can tell it's Casey on all the voices, but he's still,
He's still got quite a range.
Exactly.
I have to comment on, in episode 6, I think that's the only episode where this happens. So Commissioner Gordon calls him on the bat phone, and it's inside this wooden barrel, and the top of the barrel flips over, and there's this bat princess phone inside this barrel, and it doesn't even have a bat on it. Like, what is going on?
Yeah, and I guess that's at the that's in the hangar, right? It's a slightly different space than where they're usually picking it up.
Yeah, because other episodes you see a more bat phony looking bat phone in the bat cave.
Yeah, there's at one point it's got like all these extension buttons. It's like, well, what are all these extensions here? I mean, does he call up Superman or something? Is he like the Justice League satellite? Is that like an extension there?
Well, maybe they're calling, like the deli and the butcher area and anyway.
Sure, yeah, Super Friends, Gordon, Barbara. Maybe they call the Joker. I don't know. Catwoman's able to call the bat phone in one episode. Like, okay.
Yeah.
Well, once again, the boundaries are fairly fluid. Lots of different boundaries are pretty fluid in the series.
I think my favorite episode was probably Dead Ringers, the 11th one. I thought that was pretty cleverly
That was the one
plotted.
with Clayface posing as Batman.
Right, and the acrobat is Robin.
The acrobat who had a criminal past because he was threatening to reveal it to the circus boss if he didn't help him. And I think that was that was the first time Clayface was realized outside the comic books.
Yeah, that you might be right.
Yeah.
Also, in that episode, I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure that the writing of this joke was that funny, but I loved Burt Ward's delivery. The burnt popcorn bit. Dick made some popcorn and it's all burnt.
My mouth was watering for some hot buttered popcorn.
Well, it's hot. Would you like me to butter it?
The way Burt Ward says, well, it's hot. Would you like me to butter it? I just thought it was really funny.
Yeah, a little passive-aggressive Robin stuff going on there.
Yeah, there's another delivery on, I think it's a Sweet Tooth episode where, Batman rescues Dick because he gets found out because he's like, all the other kids are like 9 or 10 and Dick is like college age, and he goes, how would you like to be Robin again? And Dick goes, I thought you'd never ask.
How'd you like to be Robin now, Dick?
I thought you'd never ask.
Also funny, in the 14th episode, Have an Evil Day Part 1, the first of the Bat Mite trilogy at the end of the series. Joker speaking in CB radio jargon. I loved it. I was cracking up.
Got your ears on? Yes.
Breaker! Hey, good buddy, have you got your ears on? No sign of the local yokels, Smoky Bears, or County Mounties. What's your handle, Zarbor?
I have no idea what you're talking about, Joker. All that concerns me is the status of Batman and Robin.
Ha-ha! We're eastbound, and we're strutting style, and...
Answer him, Joker. He doesn't want to hear all that foolish CB gibberish.
Yeah,
that's the second time that CB jargon comes up as kind of useful.
Right, because Robin actually knows it. Yeah, Robin actually knows it, and he uses it to get a message to Gordon.
Using his middle name.
Yeah, that is his middle name in the comic books, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Breaker with a big 1034.
Go, Breaker.
Have you got your ears on? Well, shake the trees and rake the leaves. It's a 10-5 for Chief Smokey Bear Worthington.
But yeah, that's one of the many things that really date this series. I mean, this really plants it squarely in like the mid to late 1970s. The CB lingo, and
not too long after Convoy.
Exactly.
Same year as Smokey and the Bandit.
Yes, exactly.
Right, which was held over so many weeks in Centerville, Iowa, that Star Wars didn't show up until November.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Well, we only had one
screen.
Oh, we only had
man.
one screen. We were a captive audience.
And it's funny because the last episode would have been out the week Star Wars premiered.
Ah, right.
Wow.
Yeah, and funny enough, the last 3 episodes are dedicated to Zarbor, and it's like we're in another planet, we're on another dimension. Lot of
which is it, planet or dimension?
Exactly. Yeah, and it's a throwback to. It's kind of a throw, and they actually mentioned this in the documentary that's in the DVD set, that some of the series is kind of a throwback to like the Jack Schiff edited Batman books from the mid to late 50s to the early 60s.
Oh, wow.
You know, because
some of the most reviled issues of the series, at least in the 1970s.
Exactly. Yeah. So, you know, we have Batman and Robin going to space and visiting other planets and fighting aliens.
Yeah, I thought of that too.
And, you know, and again, I mean, that's something Bob Kane probably would have suggested as well. So it's kind of a weird throwback to that.
Which Holy Silver Age.
Yeah. I'm not saying it's bad. It's kind of unique. And it's interesting that they went that direction.
It has a basis in Batman history.
Exactly. And then it ends just as Star Wars is about to be unleashed. You know, it's kind of perfect timing almost.
Yeah, so it kind of carries on into the next big thing there.
Right. So as far as, I mean, we mentioned there's no Alfred. I remember when I was reviewing this series for my podcast, and I was having, you know, trouble reconciling. Is this in the same continuity as 66? And because there's no Alfred, there's no Aunt Harriet.
Nope.
Yeah, and the point for me where I decided, no, this is a completely different continuity, was in the Electro episode where they get shrunken down and then they fall out of his land speeder and they land into this ravine, and they're like miniature size, and like they got to swim the way back to shore. And Robin says,
Well, look at it this way, Batman. You always wanted to learn how to surf, and I can't think of a better time than now.
Good thinking, Robin.
Well, of course, we know that Batman can surf, you know, against the Joker. So this has got to be like different continuity altogether. This is like Earth 77, I think.
Yeah.
I wondered about that too. Suddenly this image of him wearing jams appeared before me and told me that, no, my son, this is wrong. This is actually something he knows how to do.
Yeah. I don't know. There's another thing that I don't know if you actually noticed, but like all of the stories take place at night. There's never any scenes in daylight, I don't think.
Yeah, well, including the bit about the solar power plant blocking the mirror. Like, but it's night. And apparently the solar power plant has no batteries. If the sun is not shining on the mirror, then there's no power.
If it's a cloudy day, they're screwed.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Like, well, this is unreliable. Let's go back to oil.
Yeah, forget about the energy conscious, energy sources. But because it's the 70s cartoon, it's night, but it's never dark.
Right.
There are never any shadows. Everything is still lit,
dark
high
blue
key.
And cloudy.
Yeah,
and you can still see everything perfectly well.
Right,
shadows don't exist.
But it brought to mind the fact that Neil Adams, when he was drawing Batman, he always insisted that all the stories take place at night because the idea of Batman running around during the day was ridiculous.
Oh, he was right about that.
Except if your other choice is day for night shooting, like on Batman 66, let's just go with daytime.
Also, in the first episode, at least, and there might be another episode, you can see the bat poles, but apparently you can't refer to them as bat poles because he goes. because when they go, he goes to the Bat Cave, not to the Bat Post. And I wonder if that was something that they couldn't do because that was exclusively to Greenway and 20th Century Fox.
That's a good question. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. Something invented specifically for the show.
Interesting. Yeah,
it's interesting how I've never quite figured out how intellectual property works around things like that, where you can the Greenway series comes up with something like the Bat Poles and then ends up somehow hanging on to it as property, intellectual property that doesn't belong to the Batman franchise. It's not just something you can pick up and carry along with the Batman characters, like villains as well. Villains have to be individually licensed. And all of that is something that you and I, Tim, never understood, and always found ourselves kind of running aground of that problem. I remember a Batman alarm clock in the mid-'70s. It was advertised on TV around Christmas time, and the theme that it played was something like and Tim and I were like, man, they don't even know what the Batman theme sounds like, and we were so peeved.
That was just like when our friend Kyle tried to order
pencils.
What's the word I want? The pencils, right?
Like personalized
put your name
pencils
on, and he had ordered them to say Hogan's Heroes, and they came back saying Hoagland Heroes, and we thought, oh wow, they really screwed that up.
Clearly, it was a copyright issue.
They were avoiding getting sued for doing unlicensed Hogan's Heroes merchandise.
Exactly, because that would have been something that's like, hey, where's our 2 cents per pencil here?
Intellectual property does not take any prisoners.
Yeah. I actually have that Batman alarm clock. It's actually, I turned it into like a piece of sculpture. That's currently sitting in my bookcase over here.
Well, we know we found true, dyed-in-the-wool, brothers forever Batman fans when you know which alarm clock I'm talking about. You probably even remember the commercial, JB. I wouldn't be surprised at all.
I don't remember the commercial, but I remember having it. It was a talking alarm clock, and it had this little record that, of course, broke after 2 weeks.
Oh,
and then
isn't that always the way?
Pretty much. I mean, I played with my Batman toys to death, and it's just no wonder there was anything left for my mom to throw out when she started buying me Star Wars toys.
Well, JB, we broke the elastic in several of our Mego 8-inchers in the 70s, and our mother somehow managed to strap together some elastic to hold their limbs together again, because basically their limbs, arms and legs would just fall off.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's how they're held.
The elastic broke.
They're basically held together by rubber bands. There's this YouTube channel called Toy Polloy, and he specializes in repairing most Star Wars action figures and stuff, and the Megos, and he'll show you actually how to go in there with a pair of forceps and take out the broken rubber band and put it back in. And it's very intricate, but yeah, that's those arms and the legs are held together by elastic bands inside the doll.
Right. When Mom redid them for Joker, I think he was so much more flexible. Mm-hmm. I think I would hear the Spinner song "Rubber Band Man" in my head and play with him, because suddenly he was triple jointed. He was awesome. He could do anything.
What we needed was a way to fix Spider-Man's head, because the vinyl had torn.
Oh,
and
yes,
so we had to just duct tape his head.
So he had a neck brace for the rest of his natural life.
Yeah.
Now you can go online and you can order replacement parts. I actually bought recently on eBay. I bought a Amigo Batman from 1972, and it was the body with the jumpsuit, and it had the boots. I think it could have been the original boots. And then I had to go to another eBay seller, and I bought replica accessories to complete the look. I got the cape, the gloves, the utility belt, and the vinyl sticker that goes on the chest. And
you can buy replica heads for most of them.
You can, right? Yeah, exactly. I mean, this one came with a head and the jumpsuit. So yeah, I built my own 66. I built my own Mego Batman. That's also sitting on my bookshelf over here.
Bravo!
Yeah, I spent like the last couple of years kind of recollecting my childhood. As you can see here, I've got my Bat corner in the corner of my room, and the collection is pretty much complete because I don't have any room for anything else. And over here, off the camera, I'm in the middle of building a life-size movie screen accurate Darth Vader that's standing on the opposite corner where Batman is.
Wow.
And, yeah. So that's the.
Can I take a picture of your background here? I can
certainly
let our listeners see it. We're not taking any video here. So.
Yeah, actually, Tim, I can send you. I made a YouTube video not too long ago showcasing the collection. So if you want to put that in the show notes.
All right, yeah, that'd be better.
That way,
really cool.
Link to that.
Yeah, that way everyone can see what I've got. Yeah.
So any wind up, Tim? I know you had a lot to say. I don't know if you've gotten anywhere near.
I think I'm pretty much. I mean, there's still stuff in my notes, but it's.
What did you guys think?
The main points.
What did you guys think of Adam and Bert's performances overall? I mean, what were your thoughts on what how they did?
I mean, Burt is a little wooden sometimes, particularly in the opening, like "and Robin, the boy wonder." But his execution of the Holies is really good. The burnt popcorn bit is good. I was fine with him overall.
Yeah, the bit where like Penguin's protege Gigi is up on the tree, and she's like needs rescue, and Robin's going, "Holy damsel in distress!" And I'm sure he probably didn't have the model sheet in front of him because he probably imagined some woman he had a tryst with.
There's Sutter's Mill up ahead, Batman.
Help!
Robin, put the searchlight on that tree.
Somebody help me!
Holy damsel in distress!
When he delivered that
Kathy
line.
Kirsch.
Yeah, exactly.
Holy invention of my libido. I thought they were fine. I remember thinking of the series when I was 7 or 8, whenever it first appeared, as being like, wow, it's just like the original show. Of course, my standards were a lot, different then. But just hearing their voices was, meant everything about that show to me at the time. Today, I think Burt is interesting, especially since he does a lot of non-holy holies, like, Suffering type, Suffering Succotash sorts of things, like other letters, is the other
Leaping Lumbago.
That's it. That's exactly the sort of thing I'm talking about. So that's a little different, but he does them with all kinds of enthusiasm. But I guess I'm really impressed by Adam West, just because he gets a chance to do like the kind of slow burn Werner Klemperer stuff that he, like you say, JB, he could use the costume to play the part, quite a lot of the time on the show. But without a costume, all he's got is his voice, and he actually hams it up quite effectively, I think.
Yeah, Adam has a beautiful, very deep voice. Much like Tom Baker, my favorite Doctor Who. It would have been great to have like both of them in a room somewhere, just sort of like having dinner and just sort of comparing notes and everything.
And hearing their voices together would be fun.
Pretty much, yeah.
I still can't believe Adam West is gone, but I'm not going to go into that grief here.
Yeah, he's always with us. I mean, he will always be alive in our hearts and minds, and he's
that's so true.
I mean,
as long as 2 or 3 of us gather here and there to do podcasts about the any Batman show based on or related in any way to 66, he'll still be among us.
Okay, well, great to talk to you again and to talk about this cartoon.
Yeah, thanks again for having me. It's been great hearing you guys again. I know you've kind of taken you're doing this sort of Patreon thing, which I need to get back to and actually listen to what you've been up to since you've been away from this podcast. And I know you're kind of going to be bringing back slowly, and you're working on your book. I'm really anxious to see how this book of yours is going to turn out.
Yeah, so are we.
A copy of it.
we'd love to see a copy of it someday.
Yeah. Well, they haven't invited for time travel, I guess. So I mean, you're from the future.
It's true, but JB, it's always nice to talk to somebody with, we don't even need to like do any introductions. We're just like off to the races, and there's no problem with coming up with things to talk about.
I appreciate that. It's been fun.
It's so much fun.
Yes.
Well, when we have the show in common, we have we know each other in that sense.
Exactly. We're all part of a bat community.
Yes. It's a lovely thing.
Yeah. So, So like I said, I have basically stopped doing the Bat 77 podcast, but it is still available for you all to listen to. You go back to the very beginning. I actually review all the episodes. I do them like 2 at a time, I think.
Of this cartoon.
Of this cartoon,
That's why it's called Bat 77.
Exactly,
right?
exactly. Because I started doing the Bat, doing it as a Batman 1977 review series, and then went on to do the Power Records and everything else. But yeah, you can still find it. Bat 77 podcast at libsyn.com. I'm also on Facebook, Bat 77, the 70s Batman podcast. And you can hear me drone on and on and on and on about the Filmation Batman.
Yes. And please go and listen to JB's podcast.
Hello, I'm Ken Holzhauser, and if you're looking for something new in comic books, may I recommend my newest comic, The Quick and the Dad, a love letter to the DC, Marvel, Archie, and Harvey comics of my youth. This comic has everything. It has spaceships, dad jokes, alien invasions, time travel, supervillains, and so many bad puns. Hopefully you'll like it. It's the cutest comic you've never heard of, and it's available today in print and digital from indieplanet.com. That's The Quick and the Dad. Join that other dynamic duo, won't you?
Join us on Patreon to support the show and get bonus content. For just $2 a month, you get access to our mini show, Bat Bits, shorter conversations about Batman 66. When we do a new Bat Pulls episode, patrons will get an ad-free version of the show with outtakes added on. For a $4 monthly donation, you also get the right to have an ad for your own podcast on the show once a month, and hours of exclusive podcasts, including our issue-by-issue walk through the first 50 issues, plus annuals, of The Amazing Spider-Man, Jim Starlin's work on Captain Marvel, and now issues of Silver Age Batman. So go to patreon.com/deconcomics and select the level of your monthly donation. Thanks for listening, and thanks for your support. In our Bat audio segment, sound from a YouTube video JB shared with us. In late 1976, Burt Ward appeared in costume on The Clown Show, broadcast in the Seattle area, in part to promote the upcoming New Adventures of Batman. The link to his entire appearance is in the show notes.
I was just wondering how Robin is going to arrive. Listen. Sounds like footsteps up on the roof. He's up there. He's walking around. He throws the rope up there. He's walking around. I'm down here, Robin. Robin, I'm down. What was that? A crash outside. Robin, it's you. Are you hurt?
Holy rubbish, I fell into a garbage can. What was doing here?
I'm sorry about that. This is the city dump, Most places, they pick it up. Here, they deliver. Come on in. Wow, boy, is
Great
that great.
Scott citizen. Have you seen the Joker, JP?
No, I haven't seen the Joker, JP.
He could be anywhere. He could be in your pockets.
Really?
Your undershorts.
You never can tell about that fella. He's a tricky one, isn't he? Hey, boy, am I ever thrilled to have you on our program.
Well, it's great to be here. I've come all the way up to Seattle and Bellevue area to see the kids in this area.
Hey, I understand that you're going to be meeting them today and this weekend over at Dick's Cascade Ford.
Right, Cascade Ford in Bellevue.
And you're going to be there?
Autograph pictures. I'll be ready to climb the walls.
Oh, well, I bet you like you did our house. Hey, that's really terrific. I have something else that maybe it's kind of a secret, but I understand that there's a possibility you're going to have a brand new show.
That's right. Looks like in January we're going to have a brand new television series here on CBS. It'll be a Saturday morning show.
Well, we'll look forward to seeing that.
It'll be half cartoon and half Batman and myself in real life.
Well, that's great.
Bat Inbox. We got some mail about episode 218 where we talked about the 68 Adventures of Batman cartoon. Paul, take the first one.
Okay, this is from Batwinged Hornet. Just for further information, you should really invest in 2 books, Lusheimer Creating the Filmation Generation and Animation by Filmation, by former Filmation employee Michael Swanigan, both offering a wealth of insight about most of Filmation's series. I would run right out and buy them, except I don't like Filmation very much. So, it's not that I have anything against the Batman cartoons. I just don't, or Star Trek. But as far as just giving you accurate information, those are, I'm sure they're good resources.
For me, the main problem is that finding time to read them, but...
Well, there's that, too. The Filmation series certainly took many influences from the comics of the period and the Dozier series, and then he sent some images. In the first set of images, Filmation based the series title and Batman's general appearance on the comic. And that is indeed the Batman with Robin the Boy Wonder title screen looks very much like the cover of, Batman 210, with I believe a Neil Adams cover, looks like.
Yeah.
And then he writes, the obligatory visit to Gordon's office, only in the Filmation series. The office decor has been updated to mid-century styled furnishings, but Gordon himself was de-aged considerably.
And inside-outside of GCPD looks quite similar to in the 77 cartoon.
Right.
Not exactly the same, but pretty darn close.
Mm-hmm. And there is some resemblance to between the GCPD and the building that was redressed to be the GCPD in the 66 show. But there are no columns in front of the Filmation police department. So then images 3 and 4, the bat signal at some dramatic angle, not as common a style choice in the comics as one might imagine, being a semi-routine means of contacting the duo, while the animated Batboat was clearly based on the Glastron version from the movie. I prefer the black Batboat, as it, at least, shares its color with other Bat vehicles, as did not have the extremely loud blue and white of the real boat, which on occasion appeared like something from a 60s water park stunt show, just saying. Yeah, not a bad thing. It's interesting the cartoons use dynamic angles on buildings and such, both the GCPD and the low angle shot of the buildings kind of receding to a very kind of, very acute angle toward a vanishing point. Those kinds of angles don't show up that much on the Batman show, at least after season 1, the 66 show, that is. Then he says, images 5 and 6, running sequences. Yes, the run loops. Running sequences, pretty obvious what Filmation was going for. As far as borrowing plots or scenes from the Dozier series, the first Catwoman arc served as inspiration for several scenes, as well as another episode where Robin, as seen in The Spell of Tut, has to be rescued by Batman while he nearly falls into a pit full of crocodiles. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we got a picture of Batman with the tiger, and then in the cartoon, Batman with the panther. Is that what that is? I don't remember now.
Yeah.
I think it's a black cat of some type.
But the image at number 5 and 5A, I guess you could call it, which is first an image of Batman and Robin running toward the camera against a flat green background, which opens the 66 series, and then an image of Batman and Robin from the 68 Filmation series running toward the camera. They're on a street, and there's perspectively represented street and trees and something on the sides of the road there. But the frame is a pretty good graphic match for the beginning of the 66 opening. Above all else, Batwing Hornet goes on, Filmation's DC series had the best main title sequences, capturing the era they were produced in, more than any other animation house until the Warner Brothers DC cartoons of the 90s. The The characters, whether it was Batman, Superman, or Aquaman, actually resembled the general comic style guide of the era, which should be no surprise, as some DC talents like George Cashton, Carmine Infantino, et al. Contributed to the various series. While no cartoon is perfect, I feel quite comfortable in saying The Adventures of Batman was far more entertaining as a Bat adaptation than the third season of The Dozier Show, Legends of the Superheroes, or any of the Super Friends series. Yep. Certainly Legends of the Superheroes or Super Friends, but I'm beginning to feel more that way about season 3 of the Greenway production, too.
Mm-hmm. Then some mail. This is all from... Oh, I forgot to say. See, we're out of practice, not doing bat polls. These are all from the All-Seeing, All-Knowing 66 Batman message board. And so the comments on the Stafford Rep episode, number 219. First, E. Padden writes, "The most un-O'Hara role I ever saw Stafford Rep in was a sobering episode of an early 50s series called Medic, which was a medical anthology drama series hosted by Richard Boone. It was a Christmas story in which a drunken rep, driving his secretary that he was fooling around with after an office party, has a car accident in which the secretary goes through the windshield and is left permanently blinded. Rep, unhurt, spends the whole episode in a dazed stupor, insisting it wasn't his fault, and that he didn't really have too much to drink, etc. When you can watch him and never think for a moment of Chief O'Hara, you know you're seeing a good performance."
Yes, I felt that way watching Rep in The Other Side of the Wind, the restored and reconstructed Orson Welles film that was released by Netflix a couple of years ago. For one thing, he doesn't have the flop Irish accent at all. Do you want to read Batwing Hornet?
Go ahead and take that. Okay. Batwing Hornet again.
Okay, I'll get in touch with Batwing Hornet again here. He writes, "In the grand scheme of things, perhaps Rep was not as distinguished as other character actors of his generation, hence the lack of period media coverage about the man. That's not an insult, but an acknowledgement of how the media recognizes hierarchies of performers, with stars or breakout performers sitting at the top of the pile. Granted, I doubt there's any way to discover how many interviews or profiles were generated about Rep, but it's telling that there appears to be a lack of Rep coverage at the time he achieved his greatest bit of career visibility while on Batman." Yeah, more, kind of the stories that we were able to find were more like local boy makes good kinds of stories.
Mr. Glee says, "Apologies if I spaced out and missed it, but I don't think you mentioned one of Rep's most intriguing feature credits, a horror/suspense thriller called Scream Evelyn Scream, which reunited him with Hubie Kearns and Burt Ward. It was filmed in 1970 as The Date and secured a PG rating from the MPAA in 1973, but was apparently never released and is now believed lost. Press books and advertising materials do exist, though. And also, just for the record, Ben Bentley pipes in that he was the source of the Martin Graham's files that we mentioned in that episode."
Thanks, Ben. Boy, the mists of time are gathering quickly. Okay, Chris B. Critter writes, checked through the Classmates site and found Stafford Rep in the 1935 Lowell High School yearbook. Wow, there he is. Unfortunately, he was a December 1935 graduate, so he wasn't in the regular photo section. They were called low seniors. And he wasn't in the 36 yearbook at all. He was listed as being on the golf team and the Glee Club, and probably the Future Policeman of America. So here he is on the front row on the far right, and then Chris B, if it's all right if I call you that, Chris, has done an enlargement of Stafford Rep too.
Yeah, I see the nose.
Yep. Yep, and the jawline somehow, even at 17 or 18, he still looks like himself. I'd say he's recognizable. Oh yeah. Also, one of his better 50s movies was uploaded to YouTube. Yes, 1957's Plunder Road. I have heard the title of that.
As you probably know, we've been doing a shorter Patreon podcast called Bat Bits, and among other things, we've talked about whether or not Robin was really suspended over actual tigers, all the details we could gather about the Austin, Texas movie premiere, and guidelines for making a good Robin-esque Holy. At this point, we haven't decided on our next topic for that show, but we should have one out later in December. When we do put out a Bat Pulls episode like this one, there will be an ad-free version of the show on Patreon. So we don't want to leave the Bat Bits listeners hanging with nothing so we can do a Bat Pulls. So we'll take out the ads for other podcasts, the please to support us on Patreon, and so you get and maybe some bonus material if there is any. That kind of depends, or maybe I'll just put the outtakes in the Patreon version of the podcast. I haven't quite decided.
Now, why would anybody want to listen to our outtakes? We don't have that many listeners to our intakes.
And of course, the reason for our hiatus here has been working on the book, but it's going kind of slow. I think we need deadlines in order to get stuff done. With the podcast, we have deadlines. Self-imposed deadlines, but still deadlines.
Yes, and with like labor, what we do to eat, we have lots of deadlines. So it's getting a little more difficult to juggle all of that.
But there is some things have been written. It's not nothing, but it's
less. Tim is using the passive voice because we're getting ChatGPT to write the whole book. Nope, just kidding.
There's less done than I would like, but some things have been written, including I wrote up the movie premiere after we recorded the Bat Bits episode about it.
Fantastic.
So patreon.com/deconcomics, since it's for supporting Deconstructing Comics as well as this show, and the Law of Equivalent Exchange, but we still have very few listeners for that one. So at the $2 level, you can hear Bat Bits and commercial-free Bat Pulls episodes, starting with this one. At the $4 level, we'll be starting a monthly show about Silver Age Batman, which will be me with a rotating cast of people that I regularly record with, and likely including Paul. I think we talked about doing you and me doing the first one.
Right. So. And, I love me some Irv Novick art, so then there's plenty of that in the later Silver Age, right before the Bronze Age hits, so that will be enjoyable.
We're going to start with going through the book Batman in the 50s, which included the first Bat Mite story, which I read ahead of recording this episode, the New Adventures discussion.
When Bat Mite began his hero's journey.
Right. Our hero. So I have no idea what we're doing in the next Bat Pulls or when, but
isn't it exciting?
Within the next few months, there are some ideas for things we could do. We just haven't discussed it. So, but we will be back here, and if you want to hear from us more often, please support the Patreon. So, till next time, we'll see you again here at the same Bat RSS feed. Check the show notes for links to the LCIS Orchestra version of the theme, JB's Bat 77 podcast, Burt Ward on The Clown Show, JB's tour of his collection of Bat merchandise, the message board responses to episodes 218 and 219, and another link JB shared with us of the opening and closing credits of The New Adventures as it appeared in Japan, apparently a whole decade later. You're hearing the opening theme now by a band whose name you'd be forgiven for reading as Sue Cream Sue, but it's meant to be pronounced Shoe Cream Shoe. Shoe cream is Japanese for a cream puff. Wikipedia says the song came out in 1987, so presumably that's when the cartoon was shown on Japanese television. Comment on our discussion in the thread for this episode at 66batman.com or through X or Blue Sky at Decon Comics. You can drop us a line or send a donation through PayPal at batpulls@deconstructingcomics.com. You can also listen and comment via the Deconstructing Comics channel on YouTube or at our own site tothebatpulls.libsyn.com. Support the show at patreon.com/deconcomics. See you again in the new year and perhaps on Patreon. Thanks for listening. To the Bat Pulse is a production of deconstructingcomics.com.